So I thought it might be a good idea to revisit an old project that I never filmed and never made a YouTube video about. And that is my bowed guitar. This thing uses cello strings and can be played with a cello bow. And it's pretty flippin' awesome. So yeah, I made this during the pandemic, during lockdown, when there was really no way to get any kind of wood or any kind of material. And so I had to dig around for scrap wood. And so I had some offcuts of some African mahogany, and that's what this body is mainly made out of. The back though is about, I don't know, 5 millimeters of poplar. And that was just to get the right thickness of the body. The neck is just an old neck that I repurposed for this. And it does have a pitch. So see that pitch for the neck? So all I did to do that was offset this on the CNC machine by the right angle. That way the CNC bit could just make a normal route, but it was actually pitched correctly. And then I glued in the neck. Notice it's got some single saddle headless bridge tuners on there. And that's just basically to get the right radius, because you want the bow to be able to get every single string. And to do that, you need to have a very, very curved fretboard, and you need to have the bridge to match that radius. It looks really cool. What I want to do is I want to kind of dig down, look at the details, talk about the build and what I did, and then let's play it. This thing is awesome to play. It's fun to play. I mean, everybody wishes they could play with a bow, right? So though it's hard to play, where this instrument really shines is in its ability to make haunting sounds. To achieve that kind of infinite sustain with a bow, to do swells, and even create like horror type soundscapes. It's just a joy to play. And if you combine this with a bunch of effects, it's absolutely beautiful. You can get like almost like movie soundtrack sounds with it. And you can even get sort of like synth-like pad effects with it. You put enough reverb and delay. We're gonna listen to that. I wanna play this. Really, that's what it's for playing. But let's go ahead and talk about the details, because I know you want to get some close-up shots of this. And there's a lot of thought that went into this. Let's take a look. If you want to use cello strings, you have to know that cello strings are quite soft. They're very, very soft, and they will break if you use them on traditional frets. So essentially what is required is a softer material to use for the fret. And I was able to source brass frets. These are extremely soft. You wouldn't be able to use brass frets with electric guitar strings or acoustic strings because they would just eat through these in a day. But for cello strings, they are perfect. So that's the first thing you need to consider if you ever want to construct something like this. The next thing to consider is the radius. So because we want to play this with a bow, we need access to every string. So every string needs its own plane. That means you need a plane for this string and this string, and a plane for this string and this string. That way your bow can actually come in here and be able to articulate and connect and make contact with each string. So you need a really, really big radius. But this, I believe, is a 2-inch radius, but it's a very, very, very big radius. And your bridge needs to actually match. I used single saddle headless tuners for this. That way I could actually get them spaced where I needed them. The other thing to note is that these are inset inside this piece of mahogany. And mahogany is actually inlaid in the body. So it's actually really tall to accommodate the pitch of the neck. These tuners work really well for the actual cello strings because they have the brass insets, much like the brass frets. It's a soft enough material where this is not going to actually be destroyed. I've been playing this again since the pandemic, so it's lasted this long with this set of strings. The next big hurdle is the pickup. I wanted something cosmetically beautiful, so I designed a wooden pickup cover to kind of like make it look like it was growing out of the body. This is a really good shot where you can see the radius of the fretboard, but I don't want to talk about the fretboard. I want to talk about the next hurdle, which is the pickup. So here is the thing with pickups and bowed instruments. When you pluck an instrument with a pick, the string oscillates in a very particular manner, almost like an oval. And the oval oscillation actually disrupts the magnetic flux of the pickup in a way that it actually creates sound. But when you bow an instrument, you're going side to side, and the oscillation is extremely different. It doesn't oscillate the same way as plucking or picking a string. And when you do this, the oscillation is so different that it produces a weak signal for any magnetic pickup. So to overcome this, there are really smart people like Ned Steinberger, who actually builds electric cellos, who patented a pickup that picks up the string's oscillation from the side, which is what you need to do for a bowed instrument. You can't pick up the bowed string from the bottom like a traditional guitar. So he patented that pickup. I did as much research as I could, and I could not find a way to reproduce it. There's just no information. So all I did to overcome this issue was put in an extremely hot pickup. This is the hottest passive single coil you can get on the market. It's one of those rail pickups. I don't remember the brand or what. I just remember looking for the absolutely hottest one. And that is sort of doing the job. You also need to run a lot of gain on your amp. Obviously, the other design hurdle is making the facets steep enough so that when you are bowing, you actually don't hit any wood. So you have to have a lot of cutouts on both the high string and the low string in order for that bow to be able to articulate across all the strings, so you can't have any wood. It's not just about this cutout, right? It's also about the facet of this wood here too. This was designed in CAD specifically for bowing instruments. Now, one of the things I wish I had done was maybe pushed this facet further up, because I tend to see myself bowing more in this area here than I do here. The next feature that's essential is this pole stick thing at the bottom, whose name I do not know. Like, I don't know what that thing's called. I'm just gonna call it like a pirate bag leg thing. You tend to see these much shorter on things like cellos, and I don't even remember where I sourced it. I think I got it from Amazon, and it works perfectly. It was just a really easy single hole to install there at the end in lieu of a strap button. But it's essential to play, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to support this tiny little instrument any other way. You can't put it on your lap. You can't put a strap on it. In order to bow it, you need to have it grounded to the floor. In keeping with my minimal aesthetic, I just put a single kill switch on, off, that's it. And there's no battery for the LED ring light, although I technically could put one in. It's just simply a passive on-off switch. There's no volume control, no tone knob. So on a traditional thing like a cello, you'd have those really tall bridges. And all I did was make that block, like I mentioned earlier, just to extend this. And the block actually is stepped. So the block isn't radiused, it's stepped like a pyramid. So this high string and this low string are on their own planes, and then these two middle ones are on their own plane. The only height adjustment you have is just what you get from the brass saddles there, which isn't a lot. So we can talk about the ugly bits now. This was a scrap wood build, so I was using pieces and gluing them together to kind of make the body. So already you can see that there's a seam here. I just didn't have enough wood. It's just this tiny little bit of wood that I needed. And you can see the seam, but I didn't care. And then there's a seam here too. There are quite a few stains here because after the fact, I was experimenting with pickups. So after the construction, you know, again, with the whole idea of magnetic pickups and bowed strings, I was experimenting with all sorts of stuff. And I was temporary gluing pickups on the sides. I experimented with bass pickups. I did all sorts of things to try to like fix the pickup issue. And eventually I just abandoned all those ideas, but all the glue residue is still on here. I repurposed this old neck that I had. I just removed the fretboard and custom CNC'd a fretboard. But it does have a reversed headstock, and what I realized is that a headstock that's reversed is actually preferable. And the main reason why the reversed headstock is preferable is because if you tend to play it like a cello, where it's almost upright, this is the part that's by your face. So typically a cello, the headstock would extend beyond your head, like it's taller than your head and it's not in the way. This one's right in your face. And so you obviously want this part by your face and not the tuners. So it was preferable in that way, but that was by accident. As you can see, this was a 6-string. I removed, you know, the string trees, and I literally just plugged. I mean, these aren't even not even flushed, It just plugs to cover the holes. I didn't care at that point. Overall, this was a fun project. I distinctly remember this during the pandemic. There was no way you could go out and get wood anywhere. And I just cobbled together some scrap wood to make a blank, designed a beautiful instrument in CAD, and then built it. And it plays awesome. And that's the part that I really think is important, especially when we talk about building instruments. Like, we put so much emphasis on the construction and the processes, but really what's important is playing it and the sounds that you can make with it. I might just set this up in the backyard and put a camera on, just, jam, just do something spontaneous, just whatever the sounds take us. And I will be using a lot of effects. Let's have some fun.